Hey everybody, it's Seth from JensonUSA, and today we're going to show you how to change your tube. So first off, the things that you're going to need in order to do this are a few different tools. You're going to need some tire levers. There's several different types. Some kind of pump or inflator, as well as a new tube. Alright, so the first step that you're going to need to take is to loosen up your valve here. I've got a Presta valve. On a Schrader valve, it's going to have a valve that you just depress. But that's the only real difference between these. So we just loosen up the valve here, and we want to let out all the air that's left in your tire. Usually this is going to be a pretty quick process because you usually have a blown out tube at this point. Alright, now that we have the majority of the air out of here, I want to go ahead and release the nut that's on this valve. Let that drop away. And now we need to break the bead away from the rim itself. To do this, you just squeeze towards the center of the tire, okay? And you should kind of feel this step away as you go around the tire. And you want to do it all the way around, as well as doing it on both sides. All right, and I believe we're pretty good there. I'm going to continue to make sure all that air is out. Now, if you have a good tire should be nice and easy to get off the bead, and you can actually push down in the center, kind of pinch your sidewall a little bit, and lift and pull that over the rim. That is not always the case. That's where something like a set of tire irons will become very helpful to you. Tire irons have a lip as well as a hook. This becomes super useful because what you do is you take the lip and put it underneath the bead here, and you want to line this up with a spoke. You are then going to pull down, which pulls this bead over the rim, and then go ahead and lock the hook onto one of your spokes there. From there, if it's loose enough again, you can just use your hands to pull it off, or you can grab a second lever, slide it up under, and move that lip all the way around your rim. You'll want to be careful that you don't get hooked on the tube, because that will make things a little more challenging. Once you have that one bead off, everything gets a little bit easier from here. You can leave one bead on while you pull the tube out. All right, and finally we pull back, allowing us to free up the valve stem here. And we'll go ahead and toss this tube. All right, this brings us to this tube. At this point, this has next to no air in it, so we want to take our pump and add just a little bit of air to this. All right, now that we've got some air in the tube, in order to give it some shape, let's put that tube back inside the tire. I like to work from where my valve hole is because that's going to make it so that everything comes a little bit easier for me. So I've gone and found where the valve hole is on the rim, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of line my tube up with that. You're going to need to pull back on the bead in order to get your valve stem into the hole there. And from there, you're going to just start pulling up on the bead in order to tuck that tube inside of the tire. And as you do this, you want to get the tube to sit down inside the well of the rim itself. And you can kind of check this by going around with the tire and making sure that this bead sits nice and flat against the sidewall of your rim. Once you have that, again, start at the valve stem and pull on the sidewall a little bit while pushing down towards the middle of the rim. That's going to allow that bead to set down in there. Once you get a little bit set, you're going to want to work from the valve stem around the tire and the tube here in opposite directions with your hands. This is going to go rather easily for most of it, but as you get towards the end, it's going to create a tight spot. With this tire, this is a fairly easy one for me to kind of pinch on the sidewall, pull it up over, and have it go over the rim and set. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's really challenging to get this last little part up and over the rim. So we're going to try something a little bit different here. We're going to grab our tire levers again. And most likely you'll only need one for this, but sometimes you need two. The way we're going to work this is you can see that the middle of this tight spot sits a little further over the rim while the edges are just about coming over. we want to start from the edges of the tight spot. You're going to take the lip of your lever here, slide it up under the edge of the tire and onto the edge of the rim. When you do this, you have to be careful to make sure that you don't get the tube underneath that lever, because that's where you can pinch flat, and then you'll have to do this whole process again and you lose a perfectly good tube. So what we're going to do is pull up and over, and you can see the bead starts to set along there. And as I do that, I'm holding the other side of the edge of the tight spot here, and that keeps it from traveling around as you do this. So you're going to just kind of keep doing that and sliding that lever as you go, and just pulling lightly, making sure you don't pinch that tube. The final one should just kind of drop everything into place there. Once you've got that, we're going to go ahead and reinflate this tube to the proper PSI. So we grab our pump here, slide it on, make sure to hold that valve so it doesn't disappear in there. And we want to just take that back up to the proper PSI. All right. Now, before I finish up here, I want to make sure this tire is on here properly so that we don't have weird wobbles and lumps that happen in the tire. An easy way to do that is to look at the bead right around the edge of the rim here of the tire, and you should see a seam, and that seam should be evenly distanced from that edge. If it's good all the way around, you're doing good, but you want to make sure to check both sides of that, because sometimes they won't seat. If you need to put a little more pressure in there or work it with your hands a little bit in order to move that seam, that will really help out to make sure that tire is nice and even when you go to ride this and doesn't create weird bumps. Finally, we want to tighten up the valve here and make sure we replace the lock nut on here and tighten that down. And that's basically how you replace a tube into your tire. And this is Seth from JensonUSA, your cycling experts.